Hari Om. Geeta Vinod, you can start the Dhyana Shloka. You're self-muted, Geeta.
Hari Om. ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्धदामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयः प्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्स सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत् वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोत्तीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरणनदी कैवर्तकः केशवः पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्तोत्कटं नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितं लोके सज्जन षट्पदैरहरहः पेपीयमानं मुदा भूयाद् पंकजं कलिमल प्रध्वंसि न श्रेयसे मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्र रुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः। हरि ओम्।
हरि ओम भगिनी, धन्यवाद। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ परं वरिष्ठं ब्रह्मिष्ठं परमानन्दरूपिणं परमार्थानन्दयतिं सद्गुरुं प्रणतोऽस्म्यहम्। See somebody raising the hand. Is there a problem? Okay. So, in the last class, we completed the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita called the Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga. So, now we start with the 12th chapter, Atat Dvadashodhyayah Bhakti Yoga. Okay. This is a very, very small chapter as compared to all the other chapters that we've seen so far, right? And this is the 12th chapter. It just consists of 20 verses, but a very, very important chapter which presents the entire teachings in essence. So we can call the 12th chapter Veda Saraha. The chapter happens to be the final chapter of the middle section, Madhyama Shatkam, which focuses on Ishvara Swarupam, Ishvara Anugraha it deals with. So this happens to be a development which is based on the 11th chapter, right? And towards the end of the 11th chapter, if you remember, Lord Krishna made a statement that a person can progress from Ekarupa Ishvara to Vishwarupa Ishvara only when he has a very important qualification. And if that qualification is not there, all other religious disciplines are meaningless, right? He had said, Na Veda Yajnadhyayanair na Danaihi na Chakriyabhihi na Tapobhihi Dugraihi Evam Rupa Shakya Aham Loke Drashtum Twadanyena Kurupravira. One may do Veda, one may do Yajna, one may do Adhyayanam, one may study the Vedas. Nothing will really work if that one qualification is not there, right? And Arjuna was curious to know what was that qualification, which Lord Krishna himself had later responded in 54th verse, if you remember, Bhaktya-tvananyaya shakyaha ahamevam vidorjuna Jnatum drashtum cha tatvena praveshtum cha parantapa. That one important qualification is bhakti or devotion, and naturally we would like to know what exactly Bhagavan is meaning by the word bhakti. What should I do to be a bhakta? Lord Krishna himself expects such a question from Arjuna. What is that bhakti which has been highlighted in the 11th chapter? So the entire 12th chapter is a commentary on that single verse. What exactly is bhakti? That is why the chapter itself is titled Bhakti Yoga, a chapter focusing on bhakti. So Lord Krishna is not introducing this bhakti newly. Remember that, huh? He has already talked about bhakti before, and what he talked about earlier, he is going to expand further. We have to connect the previous discussion and the 12th chapter. A lot of cross-referencing needs to be done. Now let us do it together, right? And you can go back and spend some more time on your own as a follow-up so that you're able to get the big picture, right? So where was bhakti topic discussed first? In the 7th chapter, and we saw it of course long back, right? We just finished 11th chapter. So in the 7th chapter, Lord Krishna himself talked about 4 types of bhaktas. And in fact, last class somebody asked, so I did mention them, right? He enumerates them, and based on that, we have to begin the 12th chapter. So in that 7th chapter, Lord Krishna had said, Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana sukriti norjuna artho jignasurartarthi jnani cha bharatarshava. So a bhakta has to progress through 4 stages, and always the initial bhakti is worshipping the Lord to solve our problems, personal problem, family problem, professional problem. We even teach the child, right? We say, okay, tomorrow you have an exam, pray to the God, you do namaskara, everything is personal. Or you say, okay, if the child comes and says, oh, I think I made silly mistakes, then you naturally tell the child, okay, you go pray to the God. This is the kind of bhakti that we start inculcating at a very young age, and sometimes even after we've grown up, we do that, right? So if only you worship the Lord, then your problem will solve. And for that, they have all these, the Kuladeva Prarthana. We have so many things. They say, okay, you tie a coin in the, the turmeric, cloth, etc. A cloth which is, put in turmeric water, etc. Right? So that is called Artha Bhakti. So we start worship of the Lord as Artha Bhaktaha. As children also, we are involved in Artha Bhakti. And then slowly that Artha Bhakti proceeds to the next stage, which is called Artha Arti Bhakti, right? Wherein whenever we enter into any worldly venture, not that, we have problems or anything, but say we do a Griha Pravesham, then we pray to the God and then we do, right? Similarly, we start a house. Now we start construction of a temple, we start construction of a house, we do the groundbreaking ceremony, we pray to God, etc. Right? So that is the Artha Arti Bhakti. It can also be success in business ventures, worldly ventures, any of these, right? So we do varieties of pujas for the success of our worldly ventures, which is called Artha Arti Bhakti, in which moksha is not at all involved. So Artha Bhakti, Artha Arti Bhakti, and then you have Jignasu Bhakti, and then finally Jnani Bhakti. Right? So we saw the 4 kinds of bhaktas associated with it also in the 7th chapter, right? So therefore, the initial 2 stages of bhakti are non-spiritual bhakti, only for worldly purpose. So Lord Krishna says, let it be there initially that way, it does not matter. Gradually, we have to progress to the next level, that is Jignasu Bhakti. That after practicing Artha and Artharthi Bhakti for a long time, a person understands that when you start attending Gita classes, Vedanta classes, etc., you start understanding that these are all ephemeral, materialistic, goals that we are chasing through Artha and Artharthi Bhakti. Right? For a long time, the person doesn't understand, but finally he starts understanding that. Then the spiritual quest starts coming. And the scriptures point out that Ishvara Jnanam and surrender to the Ishvara is the only solution with regard to the problem of samsara, and then alone the materialistic bhakta becomes a spiritual bhakta. Okay, so then the conversion happens, and that bhakti is called, not only it's called Jignasu Bhakti, it's also called Mumukshu Bhakti. Right? Sanskrit students will know Mumukshu is a Sannanta, Moksham Ichuhu, right? So the person who likes, who wants, whose desire is of moksha is called a mumukshuhu, right? Jnatum icha is jignasuhu, and moktum icha is mumukshuhu, right? Moktum icha mumukshuhu. So this progress is a very major progress that, and I get interested, I'm desirous of moksha, right? So, but I don't know how to get moksha, right? So because I have no clue, I don't understand how I should go about it, right? So there are many different people suggesting different things, right? But what does the Veda say, right? Ishvara jnanena eva moksha, right? It says tameva vidvana amritaiha bhavati na anyapanta ayanaya vidyate. The Shvedashvatara Upanishad very clearly says that na anyapanta, there is no other path. Very clearly Veda says that there is no other path. This is the significant proof or evidence that You cannot have multiple paths to moksha. It says clearly that jnanam alone, Ishvara jnanam, self-knowledge alone gives you moksha, right? So Shvetashvatara Upanishad says this, right? So tamevam vidvana amrita iha bhavati na anya panta ayanaya vidyate, right? So now what is the meaning of the word jnanam? Jnanam is the knowledge of Ishvara, right? And what Shvetashvatara Upanishad says is, if you can get moksha without jnanam, if you roll this, you can get, provided you are able to roll the sky like a carpet. What does that mean? It's impossible to get moksha without Ishvara Jnanam. So Lord Krishna himself makes it very clear in the 4th chapter. Now we are going still backwards, right? 7th, we saw the different types of bhakta, and then in the 4th chapter, Krishna himself makes it very, very clear. Okay. So in the 4th chapter, this is a very, very often quoted shloka. Tadviddit pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadeksyanti te jnanam jnaninas tattva darshinaha. Right? A jignasu bhakta, right? He would be interested in receiving the knowledge from a guru. That means going through a spiritual education program called Jnana Yoga is the job of the Jignasu Bhakta. But he faces a problem. What is that? Jnana Yoga will work only when the mind is refined sufficiently to receive the knowledge, to retain the knowledge, and to assimilate the knowledge. Because Ishvara Jnanam is extremely subtle, as we will be seeing in the following chapters. We're going to see. Even in the 9th chapter, we saw, right? Therefore, without Jnana Yogyata Prapti, right? Fitness for receiving Ishvara Jnanam, right? Jnana Yoga will not work. Therefore, Lord Krishna recommends preparatory disciplines of the 2 important yogas for getting Jnana Yogyata. They are known as Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga. Karma Yoga, please, pay attention. This is actually connecting everything together. Karma Yoga is for diluting the Raga Dvesha, right? And Upasana Yoga is for ensuring that we enjoy a mind which is not preoccupied. One of the biggest obstacles to Shravanam is the mind is always preoccupied, either with the family or with the profession or one thing or the other, right? A preoccupied mind is a shallow mind. A shallow mind cannot give 100% of attention to the Guru's teaching. And with 5% mind, knowledge cannot be received at all, right? The mind must be 100% available for the for grasping the teaching, right? So Upasana Yoga, meditation on one form or the other is described. We saw different forms of meditation, right? So that I learned to meditate on Ishvara, cutting off all my preoccupations. You try meditation and see, only then you will actually be able to realize how difficult meditation is, and it takes a lot of practice to train the mind, right? So even at the time of japa or dhyana, the mind will have everything else other than this, right? And therefore, Upasana Yoga and Karma Yoga are 2 preparatory steps to be practiced by, right, the Jignasu Bhakta, not Artha Bhakta and Artharthi Bhakta. They are not interested in this, right? It is the Jignasu Bhakta who must go through all the 3 yogas, Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga for Jnana Yogyata Prapti. The Jnana Yoga is for Jnana Prapti, right? So entire spiritual sadhana consists of Karma, Upasana and Jnana Yoga, and all 3 put together is called Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is not a separate yoga. Bhakti Yoga is the collective name of all 3 yogas put together, practiced by whom? By Jignasu Bhaktaha, right? Practiced by Jignasu Bhaktaha. So Lord Krishna calls it Ananya Bhakti, Avyabhicharini Bhakti, Jignasu Bhakti. These are all the names that are used in the Bhakti Yoga chapter. Once a Jignasu Bhakta goes through Bhakti Yoga, consisting of Karma plus Upasana plus Jnana Yoga, then he will be converted into the fourth type of bhakta, which is a Jnani Bhakta. Jnani Bhakta is a liberated person. So therefore, the 12th chapter can be broadly divided into two parts. Very important. The first part is the yoga practiced by the Jignasu Bhakta. The three yogas are practiced by the Jignasu Bhakta. This is said up to the 12th verse. This is the first half. When a person successfully goes through all these three yogas, he will get converted into what? Right? He will get converted into Jnani Bhakta. So then he enjoys the benefit of being a Jnani Bhakta. How will that benefit be? This description of a Jnani Bhakta's life, where did we see? In the second chapter of the Gita, where Arjuna asked Krishna, Sthita Prajnasya ka bhasha, right? Now we are back, getting into the second chapter, right? So in the second chapter, Arjuna asked, right? Oh Krishna, what is the description of this such a wise man, right? Sthita Prajna. So Sthita Prajna is a Jnani Bhakta, right? And then we saw all the Sthita Prajna Lakshanani from verses 54 to 72 of the second chapter. And then in verse 55, Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanyev atmana tushtaha sthita prajnasya tochite. So a Lord answered, oh Arjuna, satisfied in himself, by himself, one gives up all the desires which are there in the mind. He is said to be a man of firm knowledge. So I've sort of given you a summary with all the cross-referencing. You can spend some time on your own actually going back and referring to your notes. Okay. So what is basically the coverage of chapter 12? I just said that, right? So the Sthita Prajna of the second chapter is the Jnani Bhakta of the 12th chapter, and he is known as Para Bhaktaha. He is brilliantly described from verses 13 to 20. So the 12th chapter is Jignasu Bhakta plus Jnani Bhakta, right? Jignasu Bhakta becomes Jnani Bhakta by following Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga itself consists of three yogas: Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. This is a bird's eye view of the extremely important 12th chapter that we are going to enter. Okay. Now, for the facility of teaching these three yogas, Lord Krishna divides it into 5 stages. The reason for my pictorial representation is sometimes we tend to forget the terms and then we just stop trying to, stay aligned to the teaching. We just say, okay, we're just listening some bhakti, right? So I thought best is to put this pictorial representation so that at any point in time, you can refer this and know where you are, where you stand, etc. Right? So for the facility of teaching, these 3 yogas, Lord Krishna divides into 5 stages. The steps are mine. The teaching is Lord Krishna's and Swamiji's. Okay. So 3 is actually enough, but Lord Krishna divides 3 into 5. It's exactly like, suppose there's a staircase which is very steep, right? Then you divide one step into 2 because it was built, say, so many years back. In the olden days, they used to build very steep steps, right? So now we have also grown older, and if you find the staircase steep, you have an additional step. Exactly like that, Lord Krishna feels from 2nd chapter to 12th chapter, we've all grown up, and therefore he divides these 3 yogas into 5 stages, 2 levels of Karma Yoga, 2 levels of Upasana Yoga, and 1 level of Jnana Yoga, making it 5. So what are the 2 levels of Karma Yoga, right? So the first level of Karma Yoga, Lord Krishna permits Sakama Karma Pradhana Karma Yoga. Sakama Karma Pradhana Karma Yoga, right? So where he permits even Artha, Artharthi Bhakti, normally it is not permitted. He should be a Jignasu Bhakti, but Lord Krishna gives concession, right? Otherwise people will not come, right? So it's exactly like in an exam, you keep reducing the pass mark, right? So he says, okay, compared to no bhakti, no puja, go ahead and do Sakama Karma. That is fine, right? The next level of karma yoga is nishkama karma pradana karma yoga, pancha mahayajna pradana karma yoga. Right? First pancha mahayajna was not highlighted. In the second one, the pancha mahayajna, then nishkama karma pradana karma yoga is highlighted. Then what are the two levels of upasana yoga? Right? So ishta devata upasana rupa, dhyana rupa upasana yoga. That is the third one. Ishta devata, right? Your personal deity, right? Dhyana rupa upasana yoga. Suppose you are using Shiva Manasa Puja for your prayer and you are offering a lot of puja to the god, etc., right? And if you can do it nishkama way, right? So that is what will propel you towards being a Vedantic student, a Jignasu Bhakta, right? So this is the third stage or the first stage of Upasana Yoga, right? In which I meditate on my own deity, right? And this is also not bad. For instance, if we are, reading the Ramayana, right? So if they say that Anjaneya will come and sit, right? Yatra yatra Raghunatha Kirtanam tatra tatra kritamasta kanjalim vashpavari paripurna lochanam marutim namata rakshasantakam. Right? Wherever we read, right, the glories of Rama are sung, with eyes filled with tears, emotionally moved Maruti, Hanuman will come and be present, and once Hanuman comes, automatically Rama also will come, right? So without invitation, Anjaneya will come and sit when you're reading the Ramayana in the house, right? So this is just an aside note. So Ishta Devata Dhyana Rupa Upasana Yoga. And the next level of Upasana is what? Vishwarupa Dhyana Atmaka Upasana Yoga. So in which I meditate upon Vishwarupa Ishvara as described in which chapter? The chapter just went by, the 11th chapter. Okay, so it is very important upasana, which is also referred to as expansion meditation, which I covered in Introduction to Vedanta and subsequently also, right? It is for expanding the mind and for reducing raga dvesha, and this is very important. An expanded mind is required to come to Brahma Jnanam, wherein Brahman is not an object, right? Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma, right? We have to come to that Brahman, which is I, right? The consciousness. That's the highest teaching, right? Nirguna, Ishvara, Vichara, right? So we have to come to that. So the second type of upasana is Vishwarupa Dhyana Rupa Upasana Yoga, right? So first is Sakama Karma Pradana Karma Yoga. Second is Nishkama Karma Pradana Karma Yoga. Third is Ishta Devata Dhyana Rupa Upasana Yoga. And then the fourth is Vishwarupa Dhyana Rupa Upasana Yoga. 4 steps. And the fifth and final step is Jnana Yoga, consisting of Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam, right? So if Bhagavan is infinite, then that infinite cannot have a color, right? Ashabdam, Asparsham, Arupam, Agandham, Arasam, etc. We have to come to that Nirguna Ishvara Vichara. So when we go through all of them, the Jignasu Bhakta will get converted to Jnani Bhakta, and Lord Krishna is actually going to, the progress is like this, right? As the arrow, right? But Lord Krishna is going to deal with all these 5. First, Lord Krishna will assume that we are all ready for Nirguna Brahma. So if the student says, I cannot visualize the formless Ishvara, then Lord Krishna says, does not matter, I will give you concession, you come down to Vishwarupa Ishvara, right? Then if you are not ready for that, then Ishta Devata, right? So slowly he starts coming down, and then he says, okay, you can't do any dhyanam, okay, you do karma yoga, right? So there will be beautiful descriptions of each of these steps, right? And then if you ultimately say, I am not ready even for that, right? Then he says, okay, you at least do sakama karma yoga, right? And suppose you say, I am not ready for that also, right? Then what else can Lord Krishna say? He'll say, better luck next janma, right? So each of these are described, right, step by step. And in the 12th chapter, Lord Krishna chooses to describe the fifth step first and then go downwards, right? So with this background, let us enter the 12th chapter. Arjuna Uvacha Arjuna Uvacha Evam Satata Yuktaye Evam Satata Yuktaye Bhaktas-tvam paryupasate Bhaktas-tvam paryupasate Echapyaksharam avyaktam Echapyaksharam avyaktam Tesham ke yoga vittamaah Tesham ke yoga vittamaah. So Arjuna Uvacha. Arjuna asked the question, right? He talks about two types of spiritual seekers. One type of spiritual seeker meditating on Vishwarupa Ishvara, which will come under what? Saguna or Nirguna. We have to be very careful here. Vishwarupa Ishvara means with attributes only. Saguna Vishwarupa Ishvara. So one group of people, right, Arjuna visualizes, which is meditating upon Saguna Vishwarupa Ishvara, and another group of people who are meditating upon Nirguna Ishvara or Aksharam Brahma, right? So Saguna Ishvara Upasaka and Nirguna Ishvara Upasaka or Nirguna Brahma Upasaka, right? Generally we refer to as Nirguna Brahma Dhyanam, right? So who is superior? Arjuna wants to ask. Therefore he says Evam. Evam means as described in the 11th chapter, Ye Bhaktaha. There are some devotees of you. They are all Jignasu Bhakta only. So some group of Jignasu Bhaktaha Tvam Paryupasate. Meditate upon you Evam. Right? As described in the 11th chapter. Vishwarupa Ishvara Dhyanam. Right? With constant commitment. Right? So sometimes we read something on meditation, japa, etc. We get inspiration for a few days. Not like that. Constantly with commitment focused on Vishwarupa Ishvara Dhyanam. Satata Yukta is constant commitment, and they practice what? The famous Vishnu Sahasranama Dhyana Shloka Bhupado Yasya Nabhir Viyada Suranilash Chandra Suryo Cha Netre Karna Vasha Shiro Dhyor Mukamapi Dahano Yasya Vasteyam Abdihi Antastam Yasya Vishwam Sura Nara Kaga Kara Go Bogi Gandharva Daityaihi Chitram Raramyate Tam Tribhuvanam Vapusham Vishnam Isham Namami. Right? All of this I meditate upon you as Surya and Chandra as your eyes, etc. The birds, animals, everything is talked about in the Vishwarupa Ishvara Dhyanam. Right? And this was described in the 9th chapter also. And Maya Tadamidam Sarvam Jagada Avyakta Murtina Mastani Sarva Bhutani Nachaham Teshva Vastitaha. While Vishwarupa Ishvara was described in detail in the 11th chapter, we get the Nirguna Ishvara description in chapter 9 in the 4th shloka. The word Avyaktam, Lord Krishna is going to use here quite a bit. The formless, attributeless, colorless, smellless, tasteless, right? Touchless, locationless, attributeless, etc. Right? So Arjuna says Avyaktam Aksharam. Avyaktam means sensorily ungraspable, right? Indriya Agocharam, which is beyond our sense organs, right? Sensorily imperceptible. That is called Aksharam. It's a very profound word used for Nirguna Brahma in the Upanishad. Right? Lord Krishna heavily borrows from the Upanishad. And as Swamiji says, we should never get this doubt as to whether the Upanishads came first or Gita came first. It's always Upanishads were Shruti, they were always there. Gita is Smriti, Veda is Anadi. Okay, Lord Krishna in Dwapara Yuga only taught this about 5,000 years before, right? So Lord Krishna comes much later, and that's why in the Dhyana Shloka, what do we say? Sarvopanishado Gavaha Dogda Gopala Nandanaha. Bhagavad Gita is the milk extracted from the Upanishad cow, right? There the word Aksharam is used, right? So in Mundaka Upanishad we see Aksharam. In Brihadaranyaka Upanishad also we actually see a Brahmanam title Aksharam, Akshara Brahma, Brahmanam, Okay. So Aksharam Avyaktam, attributeless, Ishvara Upasate. Some other people meditate, and among them K Yoga Vittamaha. Who is the greater one? Who is the superior one? He asked this question with an intention so that he can follow the superior one. Which one should I follow? With that intention, he chooses, he asks the question, which one is better? So what is going to be the answer? Right? Let us read. Shri Bhagavanuvacha Shri Bhagavanuvacha Maya Veshyamano Ye Mam Maya Veshyamano Ye Mam Nitya Yukta Upasate Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Parayopetaha Shraddhaya Parayopetaha ते मे युक्ततमामताः ते मे युक्ततमामताः. So Lord Krishna feels that Arjuna's question itself is inappropriate. He is asking the question with an intention to choose one of them. Lord Krishna wants to convey that there is actually no choice in these sadhanas. Whether Saguna Ishvara is better or Nirguna Ishvara is better, the question itself is wrong, because everybody has to start with Saguna Ishvara and everybody must come to the real one, which is Nirguna Ishvara. As I often, keep saying is, without Saguna, right, one cannot come to Nirguna. But without Nirguna, Saguna is incomplete, right? Therefore, everyone has to go through all stages of Saguna and Nirguna. Similarly, there is no choice also with respect to Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga or Jnana Yoga. Many people ask that question. So it is important to clarify this, right? So Lord Krishna never feels that we can choose any of them. Some people give a choice. They say you're a Rajasic person, right? So you can get moksha through Karma Yoga. If you're emotional, you can get through Bhakti Yoga, right? It is not correct. All of them are equally important and they're all needed, right? And for the mystic people, they say, oh, Raja Yoga, you can raise your Kundalini, etc. No, right? So you need Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, and Jnana Yoga, right? So this is not at all the understanding or the teaching that one of the yogas is enough as per your guna is not accepted by the Veda at all, right? Everyone requires Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. So therefore, there is no question of which is better. So if a person asks, right, which one should I practice? Then what will you answer, right? For instance, a mother asks a school teacher, right? If I want to put my child in your school, and you say, right, which standard I should put my child in, right? What will the headmaster say? He will not say any particular standard. He will say what is the level of this student, right? Depending upon that, I will put him in the appropriate class. Similarly, depending upon our level, we have to choose, right? So if we are ready for Vishwarupa Upasana, we can start. Otherwise, we have to start with Ekarupa. If we say, no, I have transcended all these and I'm ready for the formless God, then you are ready for Jnana Yoga. Therefore, Lord Krishna does not want to say which is superior. Therefore, he gives a very ingenious, mischievous answer here. He says, Vishwarupa Upasaka is great. Nirguna Upasaka will attain moksha. Right? So what do we understand from that? Don't ask the question, it means, right? Therefore, he said, Mai Aveshya Manoyemam. So those Vishwarupa Upasakas who fix their mind on the Vishwarupa Ishvara, Mai here refers to Vishwarupa Ishvara of the previous chapter, they practice Vishwarupa Upasana with constant commitment. Nitya Yuktaha means constant commitment, and Shraddhaya Paraya Upeta, with Shraddha in that sadhana and in that Ishvara. And that the belief is that this meditation will help me in attaining moksha with Shraddha, right? serious Shraddha, they are the greatest Bhakta, right? So they believe that ultimately I will get moksha, right? So Arjuna is very happy. He thought you need not come to Nirguna Bhakti at all, because Nirguna Bhakti is allergic to many people, right? Because here you can get emotional, you can have a personal God, right? You can talk to God, you can attribute a form to the God, etc., right? So we all think of, whenever people think of Nirguna Ishvara, they get a little jittery, right? So Arjuna is now happy. Now Lord Krishna is going to put a bombshell, right? The next verse he says, Nirguna Upasaka alone will attain me, right? So let's see that. Right? He's going to say that in the next verse. So what is happening is, after answering Arjuna's question from the third verse onwards, Lord Krishna is talking about the 5 levels of spiritual sadhanas. A very, very rare chapter, right? As I said. So 12th to 20th, 20 verses, right? Even though it has only just 20 verses, most of this 5 stages is packed in very short number of verses, and Lord Krishna wants to talk about the 5 levels, and as I said, he wants to start from the highest level and come 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? And the 5th one is the highest level of Nirguna Ishvara Upasana that he is going to talk about, right? So let me just remind you about this. So he's going to start with Nirguna Ishvara Upasana, right? Starting in verses 3, 4 and 5, he is going to complete this, okay? Continuing. Etvaksharamanirdeshyam avyaktam paryupasate sarvatra gamachintyam cha kutastamachalam dhruvam sanniyamyendriyagramam sarvatra samabuddhayah te prapnuvanti mameva sarvabhutahite ratah. These 2 verses should go together, and in the 4th verse Lord Krishna defines who is a Nirguna Ishvara Upasaka, otherwise called Jnana Yogi. So first Lord Krishna says he has to come to the level of Jnana Yoga only by going through the previous stages of the 2 levels of Karma Yoga and 2 levels of Upasana Yoga. He has gone through, and therefore he enjoys a mature, refined and a fine intellect which can visualize the formless, attributeless Brahman, and therefore what is the type of mind the Jnana Yogi enjoys? That is described in the 4th shloka, right? Te, let's see the 4th shloka first. Te refers to those who are at the Jnana Yoga level by going through the previous 4 stages. Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. They have practiced several values prescribed in the scriptures as a mean of refining the mind. Several values in the Ashtanga Yoga, right? Yama, Niyama, all of that. And then also the Ashtanga Yoga speaks of Ahimsa, Satyam, Asteyam, Brahmacharyam, Aparigraham, Shaucham, Santosham, Tapaha, Swadhyaya, Ishvara, Pranidanani, etc. Right? Actually, Swamiji gave a talk on this called 10 Commandments of Hinduism. If possible, maybe I'll give you a link to the transcription in the next class. But otherwise, you can also listen to his talk on this by downloading from the Shastra Prakashika app. Right? So here, Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha means the one who is considerate with regard to all other living beings. One who is able to think from the standpoint of the other people also. The one who has diluted Ahankara and Mamakara. Therefore, Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha means the one who is the well-wisher of all the living beings, the one who regularly prays and means Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha, right? Instead of praying for my family, my profession, etc., right? So a spiritual seeker has to break that barrier and sincerely be able to pray Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, universal prayer, a very important diluted Aham, Mama and San Niyamya Indriya Gramam, right? This is now talked about in Ashtanga Yoga. So Sanniyamya Indriya Grama in Ashtanga Yoga is talked about the capacity, right, to withdraw all the sense organs and the mind from the world at will. So suppose I sit for meditation and japa and I say Om, right? I must be able to withdraw the mind and sense organs at will and bring it to the object of meditation, whether it is our Ishtadevata or whether it is Vishwarupa, right? So therefore, Indriya Gramam Sanniyamya, destroying the sense organs and the mind, destroying within double quotes, and Sarvatra Samabuddhayaha. He has diluted the Raga and Dvesha with regard to things and beings, and this Raga Dvesha reduction is possible only when I look at the world, right, as one Vishwarupa Ishvara, then both Raga and Dvesha will be replaced by reverence, right? Very tough task, right? Therefore, Samabuddhya, the vision of equanimity or Ishvara Bhavana, right? This is the most important aspect that is being stressed upon here. So, as in Ishavasya Upanishad, the mantra, it begins with it, may you envelop the entire world with your new bhavana. Idagum sarvam Ishvara, right? This also has to be practiced through Vishwarupa Upasana. So Raga Dvesha dilution is indicated by the word Sarvatra Samabuddhayaha. So Raga Dvesha is Vishama Buddhihi. Samabuddhihi is opposite of Vishama Buddhihi, right? So which means a calm mind, right? That's all, right? Calm mind, Samabuddhayaha, right? Equanimous mind, right? So the next one he has already practiced in Upasana Yoga is Sanniyamya Indriya Gramam. Basically, the value, see, this is basically he is getting this value out of practicing Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga, which is Sanniyamya Indriya Gramam, right? So I learned to withdraw my mind, etc. And he's, as I said, he is also familiar with Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, etc. because they aid in the meditation process itself. Such a person practices Jnana Yoga, right? What is this Jnana Yoga? Knowing the higher nature of Ishvara. When I say higher nature, it means Para Prakriti of the 7th chapter. So Lord Krishna talked about the higher nature. God in his absolute nature is called Brahman or otherwise Akshara Brahman. This person, Jnana Yogi, knows and meditates upon Aksharam Brahma. Thus the entire 4th shloka says that this person has gone through the first 4 levels and such a person is ready for Jnana Yoga, listening to Nirgunam Brahma called Aksharam. So what is the nature of this Aksharam Brahma? Krishna defines in the 3rd verse, and each word is a profound word. Anirdeshyam, Avyaktam, Sarvatragam, Achintyam, Kutastam, Achalam, Dhruvam, Ishvara. This is real nature, right? So all forms, colors of Ishvara all belong to what? Apara Prakriti, right? So the real Ishvara is Nirgunam Brahma, right? So Yetu, those advanced senior students, Aksharam Pariyupasate, meditate upon the formless God called Brahman. And what is the nature of that Brahman? Several descriptions are given, right? Avyaktam means the pure formless God is not available for sensory perception, Indriya Agocharam, right? So the 5 attributes, Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, they're all not there, right? Or the sense organs cannot objectify the real God, right? You don't have the Maika version, right, in the real God, right? So the real one is Avyaktam, Indriya Agocharam. The next description of the Lord is Achintyam. not only an object which the sense organs cannot conceive, right? But it is not objectifiable by the mind also, right? And if God is objectifiable through the mind, again there will be a subject-object division, right? So the finitude will come down. So the second description is achintyam, cannot even be conceived of in the mind. Third description of the real God is anirdeshyam, means indescribable through words. You cannot describe God, right? Through words we cannot describe God, right? So all the words we have are based on what? On our experience. So whatever words we have in the dictionary is based on the experience which we get through the 5 sense organs, right? So such a God cannot be even described through any of these words, right? So the scripture actually uses all types of ingenious methods in which they reveal this Brahman without actually revealing. When once you go through the Upanishads, you will relate to what I'm saying here, right? So indirectly, the Upanishad reveals, right? So there are people who find it very, very difficult, right, to understand, right? So that is the beauty of the Upanishad. So you need a teacher who will unlock this for you, and through an indirect method it is communicated, right? So anirdeshyam is indescribable. That's the third description. The fourth one is sarvatragam, all pervading. Being infinite, the real God is all pervading in the basically, right? In the temple, the God is represented as a murti, or like a flag represents the whole country, right? So in Hinduism, we don't have many gods. It's a very wrong notion that is propagated, right? It is just that we just have different forms of representation, and symbols are many for that one infinite God. Therefore, sarvatragam means all pervading, free from spatial limitations. And then the next word is dhruvam, meaning eternal, which is not limited by time also, sarvatragam. So dhruvam, not limited by time. Desha kala avadibhyam nirmuktam, right? So Ishvara is sarvatragam and dhruvam. And then the next description is achalam, right? Achalam is basically, a mountain is called achalam, right? That's why Arunachala Ishvara, right? Achalam. Achalam, literally the meaning is, we take it as a mountain, but the literal meaning is non-moving, right? So even a lazy person those days used to be called as achala, right? So non-moving is the real Ishvara, right? No coming, going, etc. Achalam is the next description. And the last description is Kutastham. Since Bhagavan is beyond time, Bhagavan is not influenced by time, and therefore Bhagavan does not undergo any change. The real Bhagavan does not undergo any change. Therefore, Kaumaram, Yauvanam, Jara, etc. are not there. We talk of Krishnashtami, Ramanavami, etc. Right? We should remember they are all from the standpoint of the finite Maya Shariram of the Lord. Lord in his real version does not have Ashtami, Navami, etc. Right? So only for junior Bhakta all these are needed, right? Not for a Jnani Bhakta. In Jnana Yoga, we come to this real Bhagavan, such a Ishvara they meditate upon, right? So anirdeshyam, avyaktam, sarvatragam, achintyam, kutastham, achalam, dhruvam, paryupasate. So how do they meditate? Not as an object, as the Lord in which all divisions are resolved. The divisionless, eternal Ishvara they meditate upon, right? What will happen to them? Lord Krishna describes in the next shloka. क्लेशोऽधिकतरस्तेषां अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखम् देहवद्भिरवाप्यते. So what will happen to them is said in the fourth verse, right? And the phalam in the second line is te prapnuvanti mam eva. Those Advaita Bhaktaha will certainly attain the Lord because they understand the Lord need not be attained by traveling, right? Bhagavan is everywhere, right? So there is no travel involved. There is no distance involved. Because of ignorance, we have a misconception that there is a distance. I have to go to Kailasha, Shivaloka Prapti, Vishnu Loka Prapti, etc. Right? Comes out of sheer ignorance. Once you come to Jnana Yoga and remove the ignorance, what is my meditation? I am never away from God, right? Meditation is not for reaching God, but meditation is for dropping the habitual separatist notion, right? Basically, I am separate from Ishvara, to drop that notion, right? So that is why we say Jnani is a Bhagavan and Bhagavan is Jnani, right? In the 7th chapter, Lord Krishna said, Jnani tu Atmaiva me matam, right? Jnani tu Atmaiva me matam. Therefore, te prapnuvanti mam eva. They will certainly discover merger into me by removing the ignorance. That eva is very important. Te mam eva prapnuvanti. They will attain me only. They will not go to any other loka or janma. Right? Only jnana yogis will discover this oneness, and all other people will continue to be in their misconceptions, and they will travel and travel and travel because of the ignorance. They will always miss the real Lord, right? So a God who is coming to a particular place, a finite, limited one, is not the real God. So therefore, the real God is discovered by a Jnana Yogi, and therefore Lord Krishna says, Te eva. And in the 5th shloka, is giving a warning also. Even though Jnana Yogi alone will attain Aikyam with Ishvara, Jnana Yogi alone gets moksha, Jnana Yoga is extremely difficult. So Lord Krishna himself openly admits Jnana Yoga is very, very difficult, because we have to conceive of a Lord who does not have a form or color. It is very easy to think of Lord as Adharam Madhuram, Vadanam Madhuram, a beautiful Krishna, right? So therefore Lord Krishna says Jnana Yoga is very, very difficult. Tesham, for those Jnana Yogis who are committed to Avyakta Asakta Chetasam, who are committed to the formless God, the attributeless God, right? As Asakta means committed to. Tesham, for such Jnana Yogis, Kleshaha Adhikataraha. So the difficulties are many, right? So Avyakta means Avyakta Ishvara Rupa Gatihi, a goal in the form of a formless God, Dukkham Avapyate, can be accomplished only with a lot of difficulties, because the mind has to be extremely subtle, right? That is why even when we are children, when they ask us to add, what would we do? 3 plus 4. We would put out our fingers and add 3, and take 3, and then put out our fingers for 4, put them together, and then count as 7, right? So it was extremely difficult in the childhood, but now we don't do it, right? So similarly, Swamiji says this will also take you some time, right? So first you start with different dhyanas. Even after Ishtarupa dhyana, etc., you start with Panchabhuta dhyanam, and the subtlest is Prithvi, the grossest is Prithvi. So start with Prithvi, then meditate upon water, then meditate upon fire, then meditate upon Vayu, and then come to Akasha, because Akasha dhyanam is extremely subtle dhyanam, right? And then you can go to Prakasha dhyanam, light dhyanam, which is even subtler, right? These are all stepping stones that you can undertake before you meditate upon the Akshara Brahman, right? So the absolute Brahman. So Sanat Kumara, in fact, in Chandogya Upanishad, prescribes 15 levels, right, of this kind of meditation. So Lord Krishna says, unless a person makes the intellect very, very subtle, it is very, very difficult. Therefore, he says, Dehavatbihi, those people who are gross people all the time attached to the body, ahankara, mamakara, therefore they're bothered about what they eat, what they drink, right? So such people, they cannot give up their deha abhimana, right? So the Jnana Yoga is very, very difficult. He's communicating, and such people who are on this path, dukkam avapyate, go through a lot of difficulty, and Lord Krishna is going to advise them. Etu sarvani karmani, etu sarvani karmani, mai sanyasya matparaha, mai sanyasya matparaha, ananyenaiva yogena, ananyenaiva yogena, mam dhyayanta upasate. Mam dhyayanta upasate. So if Jnana Yoga is difficult, what should we do? Right? The popular wrong reply is, right, that if Jnana Yoga is a difficult path, then you take karma path, bhakti path, yoga path, or you take Nama Sankirtanam path. Some people say there are 32 paths, Nada Yoga path, any number of paths. Shankaracharya wants to make it very, very clear. In his commentary, he thoroughly analyzes the scriptures and he says, right, the scriptures are very clear that Jnana Yoga is the only path available for moksha. There are no alternative paths. Tamevam vidvana amritaiha bhavati. As I said, Nanya panta ayanaya vidyate. Right, mantra 20 of Shvetashvatara Upanishad. I have known that great Purusha who is brilliant, right? And there is no other path for liberation other than this Jnana Yoga to attain that Akshara Purusha. Right? This is what the Veda says, and which is our source for spiritual sadhana, and it makes it very clear, na anya panta ayanaya vidyate. There are no other alternative path. So since Jnana Yoga is difficult, right? So for anything, right, can be made simple by preparation, right? So anything is generally difficult for the unprepared one, right? So this is exactly like, you know, Swamiji gives this example of the tea shop to lighten the mood. He says that the tea shop fellow, he has these two vessels and he keeps on, you know, transferring the tea from one cup to the other, and he literally keeps it horizontal and he does it, and he's able to do it without a drop of tea spilling, right? How does it happen? Through practice and preparedness, right? So here also jocularly Swamiji says it is important for you, right, to prepare your mind, and that is why we have the other 4 levels which we saw in those steps, right? Karma and upasana, 2 levels each you practice, then Jnana Yoga will be very, very simple. So Lord Krishna himself tells it in the 9th chapter of the Gita also, right? So Pratyaksha avagamam dharmyam susukam kartum avyayam. Krishna says Jnana Yoga is very, very easy. You continue to attend classes, do your Shravanam, right? Right? When you are not, you know, when you're not ready, you have a problem, but you go through Gita Shravanam, but you treat it as a type of Karma Yoga only. Shravanam also becomes a form of Karma Yoga for the unprepared mind, right? So you will only get punya because of listening to scriptures, trying to understand, right? And it is one of the Pancha Mahayajnas called Brahma Yajna. While you are continuing the Gita study, all the other sadhanas that Lord Krishna is prescribing, we will try to follow them, and when we prepare the mind, you will find that gradually the Gita classes, which appeared very, very abstract gradually, will become to make a lot of sense, right? And as Swamiji says, people start telling Swamiji, Swamiji, with the 2nd round and 3rd round, I think you have improved your teaching greatly. It is just that our mind becomes subtler and subtler, and we are able to understand the teaching much, much better. The 2nd time we listen, the 3rd time we listen. So it will become simpler. So don't skip Jnana Yoga. Make Jnana Yoga easier by listening to it more and more and practicing the Karma and Upasana Yoga. Details of these we will see in the following classes that we have. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Any questions? Mohana, go ahead.
Namaskara, Bhagini.
Namaskar.
Yesterday, I was listening to a talk on mindfulness, and what I realized, and they were talking about mindfulness and all that, and how it will give you equanimity and everything. Then I told them that everything, I realized, and I told them that everything is in Bhagavad Gita from your classes. First, I used to think our Hindu religion doesn't give us any chance of meditation. Okay, that's what I used to think. So I went and explored Vipassana, I've explored this and that. Then my husband on his deathbed told me, you don't have to go anywhere. Do what we have been doing in this family. And then she was talking about equanimity, this and that. Everything what you have taught is already, that's what they taught. But it has become fashionable to say mindful living, mindful this. You have already taught me in Vedanta. Then I listened to Swami Sarvapriyananda also, and then he tells the same thing on Vedanta. So I want the world to know that Sanatana Dharma and our Vedanta classes are more than enough for doing anything. We don't have to run fashionably and say, I do mindful, meditation. It's become kind of a thing. So because of your classes, I've realized the completeness of what we have, and I'm so blessed and so grateful to you that I have this chance of understanding Vedanta. Thank you. Dhanyawad, Bhagini.
It is Shastra's grace and Shastra's glory. Okay, here are some questions. Does Surdas Krishna's Bhakti come under the 5th stage? Now, the very important point that we must remember is, I don't know the exact level at which he would be placed, somewhere between, maybe it could be 3, it could be 4, it could be 5, because what happens in the mind of the person is not known to others, right? So he could have been a realized kind of person, a Jivan Mukta, which is what we hear, right? But he used bhakti to propagate amongst his followers and his devotees, right? So that is what I can make out of Mirabai, Surdas, all of them, right? So can Shiva Manasa Puja be done during periods? If I don't chant, it keeps playing in my head. This is what happens, right? When something is ingrained in your mind, it will come automatically during all times. And in Jnana Yoga, there is no difference between gender, etc., right? Only in the Karma Kanda, the ritualistic portion, all these come. So what you're doing as Manasa Puja, there is nothing wrong in continuing at all times. And you cannot even stop it, because God is always there in your thoughts when you are, all the time chanting, and you have spent so much time with, the Ishta Devata, right? Saguna and Nirguna are interdependent, yes. So only from Saguna, we will be able to go to Nirguna Ishvara Dhyanam. That is why, if you want to be exact, you normally use the word Saguna Ishvara and Nirguna Brahman. But both are related to such an extent that unless you go through these steps, you will not be able to reach the 5th step. Okay. There is one more. Okay, Kutastham means what? Yeah. Kutastham, what does it mean is explained in the Upanishads as well as in Panchadashi. It is basically, I don't want to get into the details of it. It's that, they keep this anvil and then they hit the iron hammer on it. So that is what is technically called Kutastham. Here it represents the changeless, eternal consciousness, and that is why it is also referred to as Kutastham. right? So Bhagavad Gita is the root of Brahmar Geet. He was the one who compared Nirgun, Sudama and Saguna Gopikas. Okay. Yeah, I know there's a lot in this area, right? So when you read the Bhagavatam, a lot of these things will come up. And the interesting thing is Bhagavatam is full of Saguna Krishna, and the Ekadasha Skandam is completely Nirguna Brahma finally. But hardly anybody goes to the Ekadasha Skandam, which has Uddhava Gita, Hamsa Gita, etc. They all stop with the Dashama Skandam because it's very nice to see Lord Krishna and his babyish pranks and all of them, right? And the Gopika Gitam, etc. Is there any other question? Anybody else raising their hands here? Let me just take a check. No. Not here. Yeah, my current understanding is that difference between Vishwarupa Bhakti and Nirguna Bhakti is Kutastham. In Vishwarupa, everything is transforming, but yeah, in Nirguna Bhakti, you are focusing on Nirguna Brahman, right? And you are focusing on that Brahman being yourself. I the Atma. If you remember the introduction to Vedanta, where I showed the Jiva Ishvara Aikyam diagram, you will see that you are actually in Nirguna Brahma Dhyanam. You are not only saying that the entire world, the entire Pancha Anatma, all of this is Brahman, consciousness, etc. And then you're claiming that I am the Sakshi Chaitanyam, and you're also claiming that the entire world arises out of me, the Sakshi Chaitanyam. Mayi eva sakalam jatam, mayi sarvam pratishtitam. Famous mantra in Kaivalya Upanishad. Okay, so that is Nirguna Brahma Aikyam and Dhyanam. Whereas the Saguna, all the others are Saguna, because even Vishwarupa Ishvara has attributes, because we are talking about the world itself, right? Can we read Bhagavad Gita during periods? I've asked this question to Swaminis in the ashram, and they have said yes, because they are beyond all that, right? So I guess the answer is, if you are in the Jnana Yoga path and on a sannyasi kind of journey, none of these is applicable. If you are in the Grihastha Ashrama, we need to follow the rituals, the rules as prescribed in the Karma Kanda. Okay. Yeah, the Sampurna Artha of the Bhagavad Gita shlokas is beyond the scope of this particular session. Sometime later, if we do every verse, word by word meaning, we will do it. We are sticking to verse level because we want to reach more number of people, and therefore we are keeping it this way. Okay. Dhanyavadaha. We will meet next week, same time.